So we'll be beginning the next session, which is Ideas to IPO, India's Tech Giants Go Public. And Sachi and Arpit talked about, how modesty is emblematic of India. If I were to probably outline one key objective of this session, it's anything but modesty. Our single objective in this session is to ensure that you walk out with a higher sense of Bharat techno optimism than you walked in with. Wait until you get through the conversation, and if you were there at Pranav's session yesterday, you would have been pretty energized. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. But before we begin, I think just wanted to get ourselves a bit warmed up. It's been a quiet morning, rain and snow outside. Hopefully some warm conversations on the inside should get us started. So quick show of hands here among the people. How many of you have used Swiggy? Sizable figure. Let me ask it the other way around. How many of you have not used Swiggy? Anyone? Oh, damn. Rohit, we have some work to do. How many of you have some sort of memory of 26/11? Yeah, we have a lot of people here. Right. How many of you have watched Three Idiots? Lots of people. Stay with me. This is about tech IPOs. It'll all make sense. Next and the last question. If you were to make a guess on what's been the most best performing tech index in the world, what would you guess? Think about it in the mind for a second. Let it sink. Best performing tech index in the world. If you've thought that through, I would like to, not the slide that I wanted, but show this slide to you that was shown to us by Pranav yesterday. So if you take a look at this slide, in the last 18 months, from Jan 23 to August 24, the best performing tech index, if we segment, has been VC-backed public companies in India, outperformed NASDAQ, outperformed S&P, outperformed S&P BSE Mid Cap, outperformed Nifty 50. Wow. Before preparing this panel, I had little clue. If you'd asked me how many tech companies in India have IPO'd, I would have probably said less than 5. If I have the number right from Pranav as of yesterday, 35 companies on this list gave a return of 114%, outperformed other indexes by 20 percentage points. That is the outcome that we want to talk about, and that is the spirit in which this conversation will be conducted. To make a quick introduction for our panelists, starting from my right, we have Anand Daniel, who's a partner at Accel India. He is an early stage investor and has the distinction of having 2 of his portfolio companies IPO in the last year. Swiggy, we have Rohit here, and Blackbuck. Next, we have Ankit Mehta. So we talked about Three Idiots and 26/11. His company, Ideaforge, was a genesis in the aftermath of 26/11 and works primarily in civil, works to builds drone for civil and defense application. The drone that you saw in Three Idiots was actually provided by his company. So that makes sense. Pretty impressive. Next, we have Rohit, CEO of food marketplace business at Swiggy. He is a veteran CEO, was at Oyo prior, and has been executive at Max, and before that he started out his career in McKinsey. He led the IPO process at Swiggy and took the company public a few months ago, and it's been performing pretty well. Last but not the least, I think the eternal techno-optimist in the room here, Pranav Pai. He has had a couple of fantastic sessions yesterday, and by the time the clock is up, I'm pretty sure you will walk out of this conversation very energized. With that, let me hand it over to Pranav, and please have a thunderous round of applause for our speakers here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to this very interesting panel. I couldn't have asked for better panelists today. An investor who's taken 2 companies public in the last 12 months, two founders or CEOs of companies who've gone public recently. The whole experience is very new. If you've been tracking Indian tech, no one thought this was possible. Everything's happening in real time as we speak. And as you see this slide behind me here. So very exciting stuff, and I'm very happy to be joined by so many in the audience today. We're going to keep this light. We're going to keep this quick. We have a lot of criticisms of the Indian tech ecosystem. Obviously, we have a lot of fantastic returns being made. Local investors, global investors, early stage, VC, PE, post-IPO, everyone's having a gala time investing in these companies. Of course, there are some lessons we've learned. Of course, there are some hurdles left to cross. We'll try to cover as much of that as possible and hear from the people who've actually done the work, who actually deliver the results, and learn from their experiences as they share them with us. So let's get started with Anand first. Anand, at Accel is most famous for having discovered Flipkart, and now Flipkart goes down in India's history as one of the largest exits in the VC ecosystem. Recently, 2 very successful IPOs. So Anand, from your perspective, a lot has changed since you started in venture, I think 15 years back, almost now. Yeah. Back then, if I remember correctly, not many people thought you could take tech companies public in India. Circle back 15 years later, so many of your companies are going public. I think it took a lot of courage for you guys at Accel to take that bet, stay with these companies, invest long term. So in your opinion, what all has changed in India in the last 15 years to make this possible circa 2025?
Okay, thank you. Thanks for having me, Pranav. Thanks for the kind intro. Lots have changed in India, but nothing's changed in Boston. I used to live here, and now I'm reminded why I went back to India, like the snowy days, right? Not the snow, it looks beautiful, but the shoveling after, right? So, Tarun, who spoke before, I've been meeting Tarun over the last 15 years, and ever since I moved back, he used to come here and talk. For the longest time, the question outside, and for most people, and as investors, we used to get is, this is all great story, but where are the returns? Where are the exits, right? So if you take a country like India, it's either a strategic sale or an IPO. And we've been talking about IPOs for a long time. Where are they, right? So I think what's changed is that in the last 15 years, I went back in 2009, 2010 is when I started investing. I think a few things have been shown that Indian companies can produce large exits through strategic sale, be it a Flipkart to a Walmart, which is one of the largest exits at that time, 20 billion. Or an Indian company going public on NASDAQ with Freshworks, where we were lucky to be seed investors there. And then most recently, the last couple of IPOs, and we can talk more about it. What's changed is the founders start thinking exit back, right? So that wasn't there for the longest time. Founder, now I can actually ask some founder, even at an early stage, seed is where we get involved with a Swiggy or a Blackbuck. What are your thoughts? Are you planning to spend a decade in this? What do you want to do? And many of them are now bold and say, I want to build a large company, take it public, and build as a public company. Like for a sub 30-year-old to say that, I think that has changed. That attitude of I can build something, I can take it public, and I can take on the biggest competitors out there. So that's really good for India. I'll stop there. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Anand. Now, Ankit, over to you. So many of my batchmates at Stanford looked up to you when you were the king of the batch, building those drones. You were featured on 3 Idiots. You were a legend on campus already. And to take something that, I would say, risky, right? Deep tech, hardware, drones, a time when everyone's talking about DJI and China taking over the world, etc. And you've actually taken this company IPO over the last 15 years. So talk us through, from your perspective, what's changed. Of course, I'll spend more time on the actual IPO later, but just your vantage of the 15 years that have passed since.
Yeah, I think, for us, obviously, when you start raising capital, exit is a very important, area that you have to negotiate before you can get money from any investor. But I think, our choice of raising capital was more from the point of view of where we were in our journey. We were very clear that we need to raise more capital if we want to be relevant for what we need to be doing for 2030. We had to raise more capital, and public markets, given where defense stocks and defense investing was, seemed to be a better place than private markets, because for most of my life as an entrepreneur, reflecting on the 15 years, I used to have this expression for myself that I was like a tiger out of his cage in a zoo in every entrepreneur event or investor event, because everyone would come to see you, appreciate you, but if you're out of your cage, nobody would come near you. So I have had events where people stood up in the audience, investors stood up and said they have goosebumps on their hands, but money would never come to us. So it's a very tough path for the 15 years that I have led as an entrepreneur, 18 years now as Ideaforge, and 20 years of building drones. hardware is a very, very tough business, at least in our country. And to build a hardware enterprise, it almost feels like we had to do a lot of sacrifice just to stay in the business and to be there. But I think a lot has changed now. A lot has changed. There is a self-belief in the country, in the entrepreneurs, that they can make the best technology in the country instead of everyone looking outside and waiting for somebody else to build technology. I think there is a belief in the country now that we can make the best in the country, and making that best and taking it global is, I think, the next phase that we'll be looking forward to as far as tech investments and entrepreneurship is concerned.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ankit. And of course, Rohit, you're leading one of the most exciting businesses in India right now, Swiggy having gone public recently, Instamart being maybe the hottest new business inside Swiggy, of course. Very loyal customer. Thank you for all you're doing for us, Bangaloreans. So zooming out, you joined very early on and you saw Swiggy in a very different avatar, very young, still proving out the business. Of course, awesome product market fit in Bangalore, but you had to take Swiggy national. And there weren't too many believers back then, especially in consumer tech in India, that taking this national and turning profitable, both was actually possible. So what's changed in 15 years in your view, and how has that tilt affected how you think about your business going forward?
Just a small correction. I did join Swiggy 3 years back. So first part is not correct. I didn't take it national, but I did see the journey to profitability. Right. My own sense is that I'm absolutely confident that if you do it right, the only thing that I care about in whether the company will ultimately turn profitable or not, because that mechanics is quite, at least I know how to do it, right, is where there's insane consumer love or not, right? Because industry after industry which have not IPO'd, or companies which have not IPO'd or have not scaled, there's just one thing which has failed. It's not product market fit. They had it, but they let go of the consumer obsession to do something special for the consumer. So like, for example, you spoke about Bangalore. We have families in Bangalore ordering on us 250 times a month.
Just we are one of those.
Register that metric, right? 250 times a month. It's like 8 times a day somebody from Swiggy shows up, right? You don't even meet your family members that often in a day. Now, once that is there, right, to not have an economic model on top which works takes a special level of incompetence, right? I think there's enough smart people in the country now who will figure it out, and then the first part is harder to figure out. And hence our obsession largely remains there, saying which is the next convenience problem to solve, what can we do more for the consumer, what will make it stick. Because once that happens, I know it takes a few quarters, a few wheels to turn, but you get the profitability right. There's money to be had in India. I think India being only a value market is a wrong understanding, right? People are paying for convenience. Of course, no Indian wants to be financially responsible. That whole classic thing of the BMW buyer asking for mileage is correct. But that's not because affordability is not there, because our DNA is to be financially responsible, right? So yeah, I think my simple answer is, it's a complicated market, get the consumer equation right, everything else will follow.
Fantastic. So now that we have the openings done, Ankit, I want to start with you. It's not been easy. And all of us have seen you grow from the very earliest parts of Ideaforge. But now you've set a new benchmark for what hardware entrepreneurship could look like in India. I remember back when you started, defense was a dirty word, right? Everyone, the headlines, the news, the people who ran the companies, no one had any respect out there in the country. But today, the defense basket is maybe the best performing index after this India Tech Index that we just put up on the slides. So I have 2 questions here for you. Walk us through how you thought about the idea step by step, right? It wouldn't have been easy. You had many, many difficulties raising capital. But you made this very important shift to work for the public markets and take it there, right? And if someone was starting today, I hope they don't have to go through the same challenges you went through. What is your advice? There's a lot of founders here. What is your advice to what they can do differently in India starting 2025?
So I think, insofar as starting, business is concerned, and I was having this chat last evening itself, I think starting up, at least for me, was not the aim, right? Whatever I did as a student, I remember doing close to 20 hardware projects as a student myself. And I just wanted to keep doing it. And I didn't see any other place where I could work that I could keep doing it. And that's the reason why I decided that, okay, let me see if I can do this as a business. And I had a team. We ended up starting Ideaforge. We built our first drone in 2004. And till 8, we were more like having fun with the technology. And we helped IIT Bombay secure top honors alongside MIT US in a competition, which was held by Department of Defense US and the Indian Army. And that's what gave a lot of recognition to our effort to many of the labs that are there in India. And they started to seek the brains of the drone, which is an autopilot. They said that, can you give us that technology so that we can make a lot of our drone programs successful? So 2008, we delivered the world's smallest and lightest autopilot at that time to our DRDO labs and made many of their programs successful. They used to go on a small 150 mm size drone to a 2.5 meter large drone to make it fly and be autonomous. So that was one part of how we started onto the drones business. It was 2007 is when the company started. And then when 26/11 happened, I distinctly remember getting on a call with my team. I wasn't there in town during that time. But I remember getting on a call with my team and asking them, is there any way in which we can go and help? We had these drones, we had cameras on those drones, but we did not have a product or a way to deliver the technology to our forces. And that's what converted all of the fun we were having with the tech to building a product. 2009, we launched our first drone. 2010, one of the state police forces bought our drone for the first time. And I think since then, our mission has been to not just build the best technology we can, and we do have some of the best performing products in the world in this category, but to also make sure that this technology gets used, gets adopted. And the metric we track at Ideaforge is how much are our customers using, and to what Rohit said earlier, right? So our customers have done over 600,000 flights on our drones. Almost every 3 minutes, an Ideaforge drone takes off in the country, doing either a surveillance or a geospatial mission. So that's the journey that we've been on. And in terms of starting, like I said, I think starting motivation, if it is purely money making, then it will be very tough for people to survive the kind of journey it can be sometimes. So I personally feel that you should really want to take an idea and be really passionate about it. And then it gives you the ability to stay the course of some very long journeys that you go through and very tough times that you have to go through at times. And I've seen all businesses, like literally all the quick successes as well as the, all the ones that had to spend a lot of time in the trenches. Almost everyone goes through very tough times, and you have to have a reason of why you want to stick the course and do that job, right? In terms of, starting today, my obsession, like Rohit said, would be the end customer. Like if the end customer is not your obsession, if your end customer is not happy using your product, then it's very difficult for them to, to build a sustainable business, basically. And the reason why were able to build a sustainable business was what we delivered was useful. They were able to do missions that they were not thinking it's possible. And I'll give you just one example and I'll stop. I was there at an event at a Naval War College a few days back. And after I spoke, a gentleman got up and came up to me and he said, Ankit, thank you for building your products. You saved my life. I was a little shocked. It was a really senior army officer. And he said that, Ankit, we were in a gunfight in Kashmir. And in that gunfight, it had started to become evening. We had no idea where the shots are coming from. And then at that time, Netra, this is 2017, was the only product that had a thermal imager on it. And they took off Netra in 5 minutes. He said we were able to locate the guys and they were able to sanitize the area and do a successful mission.
Incredible, incredible. Rohit, maybe a little bit more trivial in the light of what we just heard. but important nonetheless. There have been a lot of condescending remarks about the Indian consumer, right? They don't spend enough, they're discount seekers. You know, when I started in venture, everyone's apparently pirating music all the time. So we've gone from this condescending mindset in 2010, 11, 12. Remember the Flipkart consumer base was only 10 million, so that is the entire TAM of India. All kind of very nasty, low-level conclusions based on obviously not the real facts. To have gone from thinking about the consumer that way, to today, it's a population scale opportunity. We talk about India 1, India 2, India 3, India 4. We talk about India Stack, et cetera, et cetera. And now I think Swiggy, the main business is in 800 cities, if I'm not mistaken. 700 cities, fantastic. So the thinking about the Indian consumer has been through a fascinating journey of almost discovery or rediscovery of the Indian consumer potential. So given your vantage point, talk us through some of your thinking about the Indian consumer. What has changed? What do you see coming in the future? And what do consumers reward most importantly for a fantastic product like Swiggy?
So I love the Indian consumer. They're demanding, unrelenting, conscious about financially responsible, and almost have absurd standards that they expect. Right? Absurd, I mean in a positive way, not in a negative way. I think what that does is it pushes anybody who wants to win in the market to create services which are absolutely world-class and beyond, right? So, like, how many of you think that the food delivery in India is way better than what you've experienced elsewhere, right? Now, the answer is not because we are smarter. The answer is because the Indian consumer is smarter and more demanding, right? And that's the push that we have to respond to because that's what they want us to do. And but just to give you a sense, I think there's no one answer to what's changing, but I'll give you two trends, right? Which I think are fundamentally driving our business and opportunity. One can look at it from GDP and all those things. I look at it from like a little bottom up. So the biggest trend shaping our business is the role of women in society, right? So I often say that our business originates in the kitchens of India, right? So for women, increasingly, cooking, and just let's face it, 99% of Indian kitchens are run by women, right? I know the men will like to believe they're contributing, they're not that much, right? And I think they're fundamentally saying that cooking is no longer an obligation, it's a choice. And that wheels are turning very fast in Bangalore, right? To very slowly in Jhansi, to maybe a differential level. And the identity of the woman is no longer attached to the kitchen, right? My mom, still she's 85, and I go and her happiness is the aloo paratha she serves to me, right? My daughter will never enter the kitchen probably, and that's okay, right? Being an agent of change, but they didn't have an option. I think we came in and we are providing that option for you to lead life in the way you want to lead life, right? And as this revolution goes across India, the wheels for us will turn. Then it'll be our job to say what all convenience can we provide. Like, for example, nobody really loves to do grocery shopping. Like you take your car, half an hour, go find parking, and men hate it, right? Have you seen a man with like 2 kids and a wife in a grocery store, in a departmental store, right? They're just they want to get the hell out of there most times, right? So it's a choice which is being provided. That's one. The second is a very interesting thing. I think I'm always intrigued by who will own the wallet 10 years down the line. And if my business is not being designed in that direction, it'll be meaningless and irrelevant in 10 years' time. And that's the 16-year-old of today. They are 100% digital consumers. They're born into quick commerce. They don't know e-commerce, right? They don't know Facebook. They don't know Amazon, right? And it's very counterintuitive to believe that an entire generation is coming up which actually will bypass e-commerce almost completely, right? And the kinds of things they're buying is incredible on quick commerce. Pimple patches. I never knew this was like, we now have 16 kinds of pimple patches which sell all the time. It's something you put on a pimple, yeah. Yeah, and stuff like that, like my daughter will call at 10 p.m. and say, geometry box chahiye kal subah. And earlier the parents will freak out and say, you don't plan, you don't this, there'll be a little bit of showdown in the house. Today you just order, it's there at 10:15, right? 4 choices of brands. So I think following them, and I think they will actually create discontinuous industries in India as they come up. I think they're 100% digital. Their consumption patterns are almost to the point of saying, I don't know what savings means, right? They're coming from no scarcity mindset. They have no fear of anything. I think that that is my obsession, to say that the next wave of change will come from how fast the women's role change in India, in society, in businesses, in everywhere. And second is this generation, how they shape up. So those will be like my interest areas continuously going forward. Yeah.
Fantastic. So Anand, just wrap this up for us.
Yeah.
From pimple patches to saving lives on the border, Indian founders are doing almost everything they can think of, right? And you see now founders pitch to you, thousands of founders every year, thousands of ideas for 15 years now. So just walk the audience through how you've seen the nature of Indian entrepreneurship changing, right? Because we've gone from food delivery or Me Too's and all this, again, criticism and condescension, to now we're building the first of its type in the world. We have category creators. We are the first of their type in India. We have companies going global on day one, right? From software to manufacturing. So talk us through how you're seeing the nature of entrepreneurship change and what do you expect optimistically for the future?
Yeah, I think the ambition level of the Indian founders grown and grown. I have to share one story. I have a 16-year-old who orders like the pimple patches, so totally like I have to go back. And for 2 weeks, just a quick story and we'll go back. So for 2 weeks, we had no kitchen at home, literally. And then we lived off Swiggy, right? So in India, like India, you can do it. So there was a day, the day before I left to come to the US, there were 16 orders in a single day. I called Harsha, the founder, and said, is there a way to cap the number of orders you can do, right? So I think India has changed so much, right? So, and the founders' ambition is what limits, right, if there's anything. And then they're getting more and more limitless, especially in the age of AI right now, right? So I see founders in the Bay Area, Indian founders who come here, they've figured out new ideas in the Gen AI world, and they want to build, like the world's literally flat now. We read about it 20 years ago, right? So you take any area, consumer, right? So we're talking only about tier 1 consumer mostly, but at Accel, we're spending a lot of time in what we call Bharat, which is tier 2 plus of India. And 500 billion of disposable income is spent there as well. So how do you go after that market? That's a very large opportunity, and we see a lot of startups going after that. Founders who are 25, 27, saying, I grew up in Ranchi and I want to build something for that ecosystem, and you solve for that, you can take it to 600 cities there, and then actually the 650,000 villages in India, right? So if you take the next wave of development on the consumer side, is not going to be X or Y companies that worked in US. I would argue that Swiggy is not X or Y. Instamart proved that quick commerce could work in India, and then it took off, right? So more and more of that original thinking for solving Indian consumer problem, right, where they are value conscious, but they also want selection and quality and at the right price, is very important to solve. Second is manufacturing from India, for India and for the globe, especially with China Plus One and all that happening. Right now, we are seeing more and more, like the Ideaforges of the world, building for India and for the defense there. And there's no reason why, I'm sure you can export it everywhere. Like there's probably demand globally for the drones that Ideaforge is building. So we're seeing more and more bold founders like Ankit coming out and building from India hardware startups, deep tech startups, semiconductor startups that can solve. Someone asked me earlier today, can you build a GPU for India? I was saying, why do you have to build for India? Build from India for the globe. Take on the NVIDIAs and take on the inference challenges and like all that's happening globally. So we're seeing founders think that way, right? In deep tech startups also. Yes, science is lesser, like the amount of science and like the commercialization gap, but the world is our laboratory here. So a prof from MIT who's from the Indian origin can start building here. We can help set up shop there. This is happening day in and day out, or from Harvard or from anywhere. So in the Indian diaspora is one of the strongest in the world. I don't have to tell you all about it. So if you can build something beautiful and going after a large opportunity globally, you can start doing that, sitting wherever you are in the post-pandemic age. And then the third area I would say is, like there's a lot of negative connotation around fintech and all that, but I think that's a large opportunity where you can build solutions for Indians all across the stack, right from wealth management to insurance to savings and different kinds of products. And yes, the RBI tends to be sometimes coming down very strong on startups, but they want to regulate, they want to ensure that the Indian consumer is not at a loss for products that they are serving. So it's a pretty evolved regulatory environment where you have to deal with the regulator and do that. So, and then the last, but I already mentioned, Gen AI for the world, right? From anywhere, but especially India and Indian diaspora, and solving problems all across the stack. Maybe not so much on the infrastructure side, but the middleware, and then going above in the application side, be it more B2B, like the original SaaS verticalized software side with AI enabled, as well as consumer applications. Just the beginning of a decade of AI, if you may call that. I would say it's a decade for India, for Indians anywhere, to build for India and also for the globe across all these sectors. I haven't gone into defense tech, I haven't gone into agri-tech. There's so many other places, but in the interest of time, I think it's a great time to be an entrepreneur.
Fantastic. Thank you, Anand. So for the last question, guys, Rohit, we'll start with you. So Swiggy, most recent IPO, I think you guys did the smartest thing I've seen a company going IPO do in the last 12 months, which is price it right, leave value on the table, give the underwriters confidence that you're going to shake their hands, look them in the eye and say, I will deliver for you. So walk the audience through now that masala of going IPO, right? What compelled you to make those decisions? How did you build that narrative around the Swiggy stock?
So, first of all, a few stats on the Swiggy IPO, which it was the largest consumer tech IPO in Asia this year. Last year, 2024, we went in November. It was the 6th largest IPO ever in India by size. And it was the 28th time where a company globally was going public with a 10 billion plus valuation. It's only happened 27 times before, right?
Across all time?
Across all times, yeah. Right. So I think it was a tough, when you hear this and, somebody told us this and we're like, oh man, this sounds very overwhelming, right? And frankly, if you look at the narrative before we went IPO, it wasn't that great for us. Honestly, there was a lot of chatter saying, this IPO won't do well, etc., etc. And I won't go into the details of what happens, but there is all kinds of interests which play out, right? And we had a choice to make in the sense we were very confident. Honestly, we were very confident that the IPO will land well because the company is really in good shape. So 2 parts, and I'll come to that. And I think from a pricing angle, we don't price the IPO technically, that it's actually investors who price it. But what made the decision very simple, and there wasn't too much debate, was a mindset we have is that this company is built for 50 years, right? And we have an incredible track record of, making sure anybody who trusted us with their money as investors got their due, right? Which is, I think Anand is sitting and will vouch for that probably. And we just wanted to have the same sentiment going across. We don't want to, for our doing, be, not accountable or end up being, sorry for reasons which are stupid. And when in doubt, do the simple thing and do the right thing, right? Which is simply to say, Anand is sitting on a 40x, 50x, 100x return, I don't know. It won't matter whether it's 40 or 42, right? I think very supportive.
100 would be better.
Yeah, and honestly, it's always great to bring in investors who will do the right thing. So it was a very simple decision. We don't take too much time. It was sort of told to us saying this is what looks like the right range, and we said just let's go with that. On building the company for IPO, I'll just say 2-3 things in India. One is build it from day one well. Whatever company you're building. And that doesn't mean you have lots of overhead and everything. But just build it well, keep it clean, keep the governance going, get the CFO the right time. It always pays off. I don't know why large-scale companies don't have proper CFOs till very late stage. It's absurd, right? You need to have these people in place. They have a job to do. Let them do their job, right? Second is just the IPO technically is a fairly legal process in India. It is a fairly legal process. There are enough experts. I think there's overhyped on how complicated it is, right? It's complicated if you have landed up with all kinds of jam before, right? And you have a lot to explain. If you don't have that much to explain, it's a process which happens because there are enough experts in the market to take care of it. Lastly, I think also given the paucity of tech IPOs, the IPO has become such a thing But to me, it's a pit stop, right? It's a pit stop. I always say it's like turning 18 and getting a driving license, right? That's all it means, because if the ambition is to create a $100 billion company or $200 billion company, then at least treating the IPO as any kind of finality is just shortchanging our ambitions massively, right? So the one thing we did post-IPO, and this is fun, where, we Accel threw a party for us. And we didn't spend $1 on partying, by the way, right? So SoftBank and Naspers threw a large party in Bombay, right? And then, Anand was kind enough to throw us a party in Bangalore, right? So we partied for a week, I think, right? Because this was also the most successful tech IPO in the last 10 years. So we were pleasantly surprised. So, we're standing in NSE, right? And I think we're on stage and the ticker goes on at 9:55 when it happens. And the market was down 1,000 points. We were certain, almost in our hearts, कि ये तो नीचे गिरेगा, right? Because market is so weak. And the stock opened like 30 rupees up and it kept going up, right? So I think we were in a pretty decent space for a week, but once the week happened, the one thing we don't do is look at the stock price daily. Because there's nothing we can do on a daily basis. There's nothing, it's a distraction. And I tell my teams whenever the discussion starts, I'm saying, complete distraction. Let's go back to why it happened in the first place and why it will 2x or 3x or whatever you want to do it. It's not going to happen by looking at the ticker. It's a completely meaningless exercise. And to get worried about, like for example, I don't know why stock goes up 30 rupees in a day. Like I don't know why it goes down 30 rupees in a day, right? Somebody else is doing something with us. We are not doing anything that day. So if we just keep doing the right things, markets in India will reward. The multiples in India have been higher than global averages. Like Unilever, for example, when it was trading, I think at 9 or 10 PE globally, was trading at 70 in India. So for 30 years, right? Everybody says that multiples are overstated in India for the last 30 years. I think for the next 30 years also that's going to happen. So we don't have to worry about that. That the economy, markets, China +1, everything will take care of. And hence this is like, you say now you drink coffee for things you can control and wine for things you can't, right? So I'll rather drink the coffee and run the company well and leave it in good faith that if we do the right things, we will get rewarded, the multiples will come, some quarter will happen when the stock is down, up, whatever. And I think that's a very important aspect. I can't emphasize how important that is because it is very easy to be delulu and start believing that you made it all happen, right? You didn't, right? You made a good company and a great company, and markets are also doing something up and down. So that's just one word of caution as we IPO. I worry about that a lot, actually.
Terrific. So Ankit, now you've been in the public markets for longer, right? Ironically, as a deep tech company. And again, everyone thought that's going to be hard and no one understands that Indian investors are not sophisticated. They'll only buy cement, steel, and banks. So a lot has changed for Ideaforge to be such a fantastically performing company. So how has life been like post-IPO? Are you doing anything different?
Before Ankit answers,
yes, please.
I know Ankit for a long time, and I was at his IPO party. Right,
oh, wow.
In Bombay. I think that is the most goosebump moments I've had. Like to see a company which is built for 15 years where, as he explained, the capital wasn't the easiest to come by, land such an awesome IPO in an industry like deep tech. I remember it was a tough day, but I just made it a point to like run across because I felt so emotional about it. So, and Ankit is carry on.
He's a hero. Yes, please.
No, absolutely. I think, honestly, I completely mirror what Rohit said about everything in terms of, an IPO. I think for us, like I mentioned, IPO was more like incidental because we wanted to raise capital and it ended up being at that moment the best way of being able to do that at that time. And definitely, in a 100-year journey, and this is something very interesting, somebody said a few days back that, in a 100-year journey, these years and this time is basically a very, very small, it's been 18 years of building Ideaforge, and whatever happens in that 1 year or 2 year time frame is not as material as whether we are on that path to be a 100-year business or not. And I think being on that path means that you will always have ups and downs, and you will always have times which are challenging, which are, they may appear to be very difficult. One such phase is going on for us right now, in fact. But having led this for 18 years, I know that it goes down and it goes up again. And it usually spikes higher. So I think it's a matter of knowing that once you have gone through enough cycles in a business like ours, where demand is largely dependent on the motions of the government, it's a very challenging business. It's a business that's not very diversified yet in terms of geography, in terms of the systems we built. In fact, for almost 16 years, we had only 2 category of products. If you go to any drone shop today, you will find that they make everything. It'll make you feel like, basically, you'll be a kid in a China store. Like, you can find all shapes and sizes of cups and saucers, and we only show up with 2 products for many, many years. So it's a business where you have to choose whether you want to do the right thing, do the best thing, or you want to do everything. And I think those are the choices, and the method of making value is something that has to be deeply seated in your heart, that are you on the right way to make value for the business or the ecosystem. So being public, I think one of the most important things, that being public or not doesn't matter. I think one of the most important things is that in your heart as an entrepreneur, you have to choose. You have to choose whether you will do everything, because every day you wake up, you will find a competitor or somebody else build a even more exceptional opportunity than you have been building for a while. That's one of the most important things that you'll realize, that every day you wake up, you'll realize, I missed this bus also, I missed that bus also, that guy is having a much better time, that guy has gone to unicorn far before I could, and these records will keep breaking for as long as you will realize. So knowing that despite all of that, you're on the right path is the most challenging struggle that you will have as an entrepreneur. And that is the reason I said that doing it for the right reasons is more important, because all of this doubt, self-doubt that will come up is something that only your conviction behind what you're doing is going to hold you in that direction.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. That was fantastic. We're running out of time, so we just have time for a couple of questions. And Anand, I'd love for you to answer a couple of these questions. Yes, please. The lady over there. Yes.
I saw a lot of emphasis on the premium consumer, and everyone's only talking about India One. And you mentioned how there's a huge opportunity in villages in India. So I wanted to know how you make that trade-off of who to target, how to have a different strategy for India One versus 2 and 3, because they're so different, and every brand has a certain target. But how do you make that trade-off, and how do you have different strategies for
Terrific.
India
Anand?
1, 2, 3?
Sure. I think, I don't know if it was for Swiggy or me. So from an investor point of view, I think really understanding the India 2 consumer, whether you want to call it India 2, Bharat, whatever, I think that it boils down to that. What is it they want, right? How do they, if you look at value and then the selection and the quality, right? And all these things, like how do they value, right? How do they trade off? And then coming up with solutions specific to them. And it could be grocery, it could be FMCG products, it could be fashion, it could be beauty, personal care, it could be anything, healthcare, fintech. I think there are opportunities in each and every one of them. So it's not about, yes, the large companies will also go after, but I'm very excited to find the next founder who wants to solve for that market sharply and obsess over that consumer, right? And saying, I want to solve this very deeply and take it across the 650,000 villages over time, but we'll start in tier 2, tier 3 towns, prove it works, and go in smaller and smaller, because the way you build demand and supply is very different there as compared to the top 50 cities.
Terrific. I think we have time for one last question. Let's take someone from the back over there. Yes, there. Yep.
Yeah. Hi. My question is specifically to Rohit, and you mentioned about the role of quick commerce in changing lives in India.
Sorry, just put your hand up. Who's asking? There. Oh, yes.
Yeah. So my question is, like, we had a nice discussion around channelizing quick commerce as a mean to change lives in India. But when you see from the perspective of building a real business which is profitable, what is your take on the time length that it takes to build a profitable quick commerce in India?
Look, I'll start with answering it differently. The private insurance sector, the first company which broke even after 2001 was after 14 years, right? It does take 9 months to deliver a baby, okay? So I personally feel quick commerce is a 3.5-year-old sector. When you are pacing at 100% to crank the profitability engine immediately and sacrificing growth is not the smartest choice. Capital is meant for a reason. It's not meant to be earned treasury income, right? That's not why you raise capital. You raise capital to deploy. And I think when you get PMF in such a major way, not to go for it is as bad a choice as not turning profitable at the right time, right? Now, if you look at how to think about it, there are 3 steps. One is the PMF and consumer love. Clearly it is, like there's no question about it, right? Second is unit economics stacking up, which means are you making money per order? Clear visibility to that, right? Third is what is the below unit economics you're willing to invest to grow the market and grow the category and fight it out? I think that's what capital is for. I'm, again, once the habits come into play, right? Monetizing on the brand side, monetizing on the consumer side is not as hard. And just to give you a sense of how platforms work, in food, for example, a rupee extra as revenue or saved as cost delivers about 100 crores in profitability today for us, right? That's how the operating leverage works. So once you get to scale, the operating leverage does magical things. But you got to get to that scale and not be afraid of investing when you need to invest. So I think it's very easy to have a small profitable business. That's not what we are building.
I love that answer. No more apologies. Yeah. Thank you, Rohit. Thank you, everyone. This was a fantastic panel. I loved it. I learned so much. Thank you to the audience. And please ask us questions when you find us outside as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.